welcome to Lecture 9, Food Chains and Food Webs. Make sure you have out in front of you a pen and pencil, piece of paper. Got a lot of vocab coming at you for this particular lecture. Without further ado, let's head into it. Alright, our objective for this homework assignment is we're going to analyze ecological relationships in order to describe the interactions found in various ecosystems. We're going to really break down and unpack food chains and food webs together. Okay, we're going to start off with how organisms get energy. We have two types: autotrophs, also known as producers, who produce their own energy. Autotrophs can do this using either photosynthesis or chemosynthesis. Autotrophs, producers, are plants, since we know that plants do photosynthesis. On the other hand, the other type of organism we have, the other way to get energy, is a heterotroph, also known as a consumer. They consume other organisms in order to get their energy. They cannot produce it themselves. We, for example, are heterotrophs. Okay? There's only one type of autotroph, which is a plant, but there are several types of consumers. The first type is an herbivore that eats plants. An example of an herbivore is a rabbit. Second type of consumer is a carnivore, which eats other animals, meat. Example would be a lion or a human. Actually, the third type is an omnivore, which eats both plants and animals, and here, this example is a human. Next is a detritivore, which is an organism that eats clumps of inorganic matter. Now remember back to biochemistry when we talked about organic versus inorganic. Things that are organic have carbon in them. Things that are inorganic do not have carbon in them. So detritivores, such as worms, eat things that don't have carbon, like dirt. Right? And lastly, we have decomposers, which break down dead organisms in order to get their food. And an example of a decomposer is a fungi, like a mushroom. Right? A food chain is something that involves a transfer of energy from green plants through a series of organisms with repeated stages of eating and being eaten. A food chain, as you see right here, it's a single chain starting with a plant, going to a herbivore, then a carnivore, carnivore. Alright? This is a terrestrial or a land food chain. Over here on the right, we have a marine food chain. Starts with a type of plant into another animal. The others is just a single strand, which is why we call it a chain. I make this point because the next thing I want to look at is a food web. Food web, in a natural community, the flow of energy and materials is much more complicated than illustrated by any one food chain. Here in our web, we have several different plants that are eaten by several different insects, or even a decomposer. And those insects and decomposers are eaten by several different other things, and everything is very complicated and interconnected. Right? But regardless of food chain or food web, everything is organized into something called the energy pyramid and trophic levels. Each level of the pyramid is a trophic level. Like we have an autotroph or a heterotroph. It's the same thing. So we're going to start at the bottom with the producers. They're always on the bottom. They're the very base of the energy. The energy of the entire community is derived from all the organic compounds found in plants. Just above the producers on the second level, we're going to have the primary consumers, which are always herbivores. These guys eat the energy of the plants and begin to bring the energy up higher up in the pyramid. The next level is a secondary consumer, which is always a carnivore, feeds on the primary consumers. For example, we have a snake that would feed on a rabbit or a bug or one of these birds. Okay, a frog, being a secondary consumer, eats the bug. Okay, and then at the very top, we have something called a tertiary consumer, which is, again, always a carnivore, but it feeds on both primary and secondary consumers. So whereas a primary consumer is always an herbivore, and a secondary consumer is always a carnivore, the tertiary consumers consume everything below them except for the plants. Now, within nature, we have organisms that are always living in conjunction with one another, some kind of relationship. And there are three kinds of relationships. These relationships are called symbiotic relationships. Symbiosis means living together with another organism in close association. So, three types of symbiosis. The first one is mutualism. The second one is parasitism. And the third is commensalism. If you take a look at these pictures, they illustrate exactly what each type of relationship is. In mutualism, we're going to find out that everyone benefits. Both of them are feeding each other. In parasitism, we're going to find out that one organism is harmed while the other one benefits. And in commensalism, we're going to find out that there is neither harm nor benefit that happens. Okay? In mutualism, both organisms benefit. For example, a bee pollinating a flower. The bee benefits because he gets food, and the flower benefits because it is pollinated and can reproduce. Second type of symbiosis is parasitism, where one organism benefits and the other is harmed. For example, athlete's foot fungus. The human is the organism that's harmed, it's the host, and the athlete's foot fungus is the parasite. Here we can see clearly this human foot is discolored and it's sick. It's being invaded by a fungus. Lastly, we have something called commensalism, where one organism benefits and the other is neither helped nor harmed. For example, the sea anemone and the clownfish. Just like many of you have seen Finding Nemo, here's the clownfish who lives in the sea anemone. The clownfish gets habitat, and the sea anemone is neither helped nor harmed by the existence of the clownfish. So, that's the end of the lecture. Go ahead and take lecture 9 quiz, and I will see you in class tomorrow. Be prepared for a graded lecture quiz. It's coming.